So babel-blade solves the double declaration problem in GraphQL, where you try to use the data, but you may not have requested it, or you may have requested data, but then you don't use it. So by pairing queries and usage, you always get one-to-one pairing of everything that you use. You can use babel-blade through the regular plugin or Babel plugin macros, and we've created blade.macro to hook into Babel plugin macros as well. But either way, whatever your Babel strategy, you can have a create query function. This is a pseudo function in the sense that it gets compiled away, just like Babel macros. And with the create query function, you can create queries. And whatever you name the query becomes the name of your GraphQL query. Now this variable is special because it just exists in Babel. So when you reference it just by itself, it gets compiled into a string with all the GraphQL that you need. And when you use it as a function, it tags whatever variable you use as a blade, and that's what the name babel-blade comes from. A blade is a meta object that tracks all the data usage that you use on it and generates its own data requirements alongside as you use it. So right here we have requested the field of movie under page query, and I'm going to show you how to extend it and ask for actors as well. So over here you can see that our GraphQL string has extended itself as we used it in our actual React JSX. This goes to multiple levels, so I can do supporting and leading, no problem. I can also do assignments. So let's just say I want actors. And whatever I assign from the right to the left also becomes a blade, and we can just use them directly. Like that. We can also do destructuring. So let's say we want result.movie.actors, and that's how the GraphQL schema is set up. We can just throw actors in there, and it destructures for us in here as well. And actors, of course, is also a blade. So we can say people equals actors dot parents and credits data equals people dot father. You get the idea. So that's that. It's a fairly flexible system, and this would be a decent improvement already. But then we wanted to cover as much of the GraphQL query spec as possible, and the next obvious need would be for arguments, and it's pretty much you just use them in your JSX as you would in GraphQL. So you add a string, and that composes inside of your GraphQL query, as well as assigns an alias. And why this alias, and we don't really need the alias, obviously, if you're just doing one query, but it scales very well if you are doing multiple queries. So over here, I'm doing an ID query of whatever, and let's just say this is ID of 12, and I have a different movie with ID of 13. I have to assign something different. And maybe I can get rid of this. And so, like, you look at the development speed that's happening right now. I can just shift around what I do here, and the GraphQL query auto adjusts accordingly. And what's great is as well is that this doesn't just take strings; it takes template strings. So if you have any JavaScript that you need to calculate whatever, this is your chance to do it. So it interpolates the string templates as well. So that's all well and good. And obviously you can see how the aliases come in handy when we have to reference different things. And basically we use the nice property that JavaScript has of having unique identifiers in scope to make sure that we don't reference different objects. So all that's good. And The other thing that we want to take care of is also, and then the top level page query as well. You can also put in an ID, which is intuitive. So that's good. And now we come to the final piece, which is fragments. So for fragments, I'm just going to copy in some pre-written stuff. And just imagine we have two different files. And here we have a movie component. And we create a fragment just like we create query. And we assign it a type because every fragment is on a type. This name doesn't really matter, but we also wrap it in the data object just as before. And that becomes a blade. And the blade tracks all the usage. And that generates the fragment here. The fragment name is parametric because we don't necessarily know the name in advance. So pretend that this is one entire file, and then now we want to use it. Oh, and then we attach it onto the static property of the component. So now we want to use the movie component in a different file, movie page. And over here, we want to, I'm just going to get rid of all this extra stuff. And over here, we want to include the movie component's data requirements in our page and load them as part of the entire app. So what this does is what we do here, and so obviously right now it only knows about its own data requirements and doesn't know about its child data requirements. And what we have to do is we have to compose the child's fragment on top of the existing app's query. So what we do here is we declare null for the arguments, and then we attach movie.fragment as part of its second argument. And second and third and fourth are all fragment fields, so you can attach as many fragments as you want. And what that does is it tacks it on at the end and supplies it a name that's determined from, what's lowercase f, from the field that you gave here. And it supplies a string that's basically just removes the period, and also just puts it at the appropriate place, which is right under as a child of movie. So that's how you kind of use babel-blade in general. I think that it's a very interesting way to auto-generate all your GraphQL data needs and solve the double declaration problem. I'd love some feedback, and just head to stuff. I'm going to be working out the README and all that. But just chat me up, and see you on GitHub. Cheers.